Welcome to our second Market Motive Simplilearn for webinar. Again, my name is Rama Menon, and I'll be your host today for the SEO webinar on how to report SEO campaign metrics. Today, Matt Bailey, who's here with us, will share insights to help you make your SEO reports more effective for everyone. Matt is a marketing expert, best-selling author, corporate trainer, and professional speaker. Matt is also a digital marketing instructor with the Direct Marketing Association in New York City, and he is also a member of the digital marketing faculty for Simplilearn. He is the author of numerous best-selling books on marketing, including Internet Marketing and Hour a Day, Wired to be Wowed, and his latest, Teach New Dogs Old Tricks. And he's here today to share his knowledge with you. Welcome, Matt, and thank you for joining us. I'll hand it off to you now.
All right, thank you so much, Rema. I appreciate that introduction. And in today's subject of reporting SEO campaign metrics, this is an area that has gone through constant evolution. Ever since search engines came onto the scene, people have wanted to know how well they're doing in search, but also if they are working with an agency, how do they know what they are investing is working? And so, especially with all the changes that search engines have made over the years, the dramatic difference between websites now and 20 years ago, as well as the measurement tools, all of these things have combined to make this sometimes a very mystifying approach as to knowing what I can look at to know I'm being successful or experiencing success in search engines. So we're going to cover a number of things, and part of also what I want to talk about are the trends that are affecting search now, and then also some of the hindrances to traditional SEO reporting, and then ways that we can develop competent reporting for our clients, for our partners, those that have stock in what's going on with the website and how we can report what's going on, what it means, and what we can do, which are really the three keys to successful reporting. Now, when we're talking about the trends, there are significant shifts happening in organic search. The first of which is machine learning. That is more artificial intelligence analyzing search queries and developing new algorithms within the machine learning to serve up results, determine intent, which is the primary goal of machine learning, and to return not only the results, but the information you need, as well as predicting information you might need in the near future. The second is voice search. More and more voice assistants are becoming popular through your smartphone, through your laptop, through home assistants, and people are asking for information, and so it is completely happening at an auditory level, not in visual level. And so how that is happening and how that affects SEO reporting is really going to be a factor moving forward. And then also, as I'm sure if you've been doing any search engine optimization for any length of time, you are familiar with the struggle that has happened ever since Google decided to strip keyword data out of any analytics reporting. That took away really the #1 way that you were able to measure the effectiveness of gaining keywords in the search engines. Now, to hit each one of these, just to explain them a little bit more so that you know exactly what's happening and what it looks like as it affects your current level of SEO work as well as reporting. As an example of machine learning, if you go into Google AdWords right now and you were to set up a campaign looking at maybe like auto body or auto work or something like that, if you typed in a few keywords into Google, what's happening is Google is only reporting one phrase that might cover 2 or 3 or 4 phrases based on, for example, auto body being, is it 1 word or is it 2 words? Google here is providing it as 2 words. So even if I type in auto body as a single word, This is where the machine learning is coming in, realizing that these are the same queries. And so rather than treat them as individual queries, what is happening is through machine learning is they are trying to figure out what is the intent of the search and then grouping the intent into single categories or single searches, and then all the variations would be included in that. Now, if I do keyword research at a third party, such as Word Tracker or something like that, now what I'm going to find are multiple different ways that people search. They're going to put in locations, they're going to put in details, they're going to, use one word, two words. And so in a third-party keyword research format, we're going to see a lot more variations because those are tracking what people are actually typing in. What Google is doing from the machine learning standpoint is condensing everything and trying to group it into, as I said, similar forms of intent. Now, what's happening here? It means that phrases or words that are plurals, acronyms, typical variants, such as words that may mean the same thing, but then they're different words, so they're going to group them together. And then also, as you saw there, words with spaces or without spaces, conjunction words, as well as hyphens and apostrophes. A lot of these are going to fall out of what you're able to bid on, also in the paid search side, and it will all go into a particular group of words under a primary heading. So that's where voice search is taking us, is really a condensing of the language into intent. What are people searching for, and how do we give their information back to them? Now, obviously, this isn't perfect. I've worked with a number of clients where they may offer a service, and because of that service, Google is trying to then associate them with another service, and it's not relevant. And so because of that machine learning, sometimes what we're seeing is a difficulty in trying to get unique businesses, new ideas, or something that just isn't a part of that overall big picture. They're trying to force it into neat little boxes, but as we know, business is not full of neat little boxes. It's messy, it's fuzzy, it's all kinds of different types of businesses, suppliers, industries that are going to have some level of uniqueness about them. So hopefully this can continue to improve, but it does at this point still need some human intervention. The second aspect is voice search, and maybe some of you have maybe the Google Home or the Alexa appliance in your home, and you've been playing around with it and seeing what it can do, but also everyone's phone, and then also Cortana is on any Microsoft operating system desktop, and so being able to search from your phone simply by a voice command. Now, this is affecting our ability to report because this does not show up as a search. Now, if you're using Google now and you are searching on Google or a Google app, it will show up as a search referral. However, if you're using Cortana, if you're using Siri, it's going to use the search engine of the operating system. And so in that case, and I'm going to address this a little bit later, it shows up as a direct visit rather than a search-initiated visit. And so this is affecting the reporting of SEO metrics, but at the same time, it is also changing the search landscape entirely. Right now, Amazon is probably Google's biggest competitor. For most searches, especially for electronics, especially for what you would consider things for home and garden, Amazon right now has taken about 40% of the market share away from Google in terms of electronics and home products, because people are going to Amazon first, and they're using Alexa to do this. So how voice search, it really is going to be a volatile industry to follow over the next 5 years. And then, as I mentioned before, probably the biggest frustration of anyone doing search engine optimization or wanting to measure the effectiveness of optimization or where they stand in the marketplace is the keyword not provided. Now, there's a number of reasons why Google has gone about this. The first reason that they gave was for privacy reasons, that they wanted people's searches to be private. But at the same time, if you are doing paid search, you have full access to keywords. And also, if you are advertising through Google, you can target people based on their search terms. So we know the privacy thing was really kind of a smokescreen. I think what's going on here is that this was really the first step to getting people away from thinking of individual keywords or key phrases and focusing on one or two phrases that would describe their business. By taking away the vast majority of keywords that you're going to see in your analytics, it will force you to look at other words. It will force you to think bigger picture rather than those one or two words that most people believe that's what my business needs. This is where I'm going to focus my attention. And so in some ways, this has been good by forcing people to think beyond a single word or a single phrase about their business and looking into the bigger picture. This also plays into the machine learning because, as I showed you before, machine learning is condensing all of these keyword phrases, trying to determine intent. And what better way to really assist that than to start taking away keyword data in the search engines. However, when you take that away, you have then taken away the #1 reporting factor of SEO, and that is what keywords am I ranking for? What keywords are bringing in not only visitors, but business? And so by taking away the #1 factor, we're forced to look at a number of different methods that we can use then to develop better campaign metrics. Now, one of the first things about metrics is the expectations. Whenever I work with a company, I want to know specifically, what are your expectations for the campaign? What are you trying to get out of it? What do you expect? I'll never forget, I was consulting with an agency about how they are developing their SEO campaigns and how they were reporting them to their clients. And I went with them to one of their client meetings. And after some of the agency people left, I asked if I could talk with the client for a bit after the meeting, and because the main reason was on this whiteboard in the corner of their office, they had visits this month and visits last month. And the client asked me about the agency, what I was doing for them and what the agency was trying to do, and then they said that they had concerns, and the reason why they had concerns is that the visits last month were higher than the visits this month, and that over the past few months the number of visits have been going down, and because of that they were having a lack of confidence in their agency. Now, this was really kind of surprising because this goes right to the heart of client expectations. Now, what I had asked that client then after that, towards the end of the conversation is, how is your business? How are leads? How are your key performance indicators? How are the conversions on the site? Basically asking them, how's business? And the response to that was, well, business is great. Business has been improving over the past few months. However, the primary metrics they were looking at was visits rather than the business-oriented metrics. And so this is where establishing expectations of what campaign metrics we're going to follow and what those campaign metrics mean to a business. This is a conversation that must take place rather than just reporting basic information, the same charts and graphs every month or every quarter that really might not communicate the information that everyone needs. And so a conversation between agencies and clients about what are the expectations of this SEO campaign? What do we want out of that, and what constitutes success? That conversation needs to take place, and then that will determine how the campaign metrics are then developed and presented, and the discussion that will happen around them. Now, one thing that I think has been I would say both a struggle as well as what needs to happen. The first thing about SEO metrics is the myth of the #1 ranking. Once in a while, I'll still run into this where someone will hinge the entire success of a campaign by seeing the #1 ranking. They want a single word or a two-word phrase to rank #1 in Google, and that is their only standard of success. Unfortunately, anymore, I will not even work with that kind of a client because it's an unrealistic expectation, and it also shows a complete ignorance of how search works and the power of what it can bring to your business. That this is much bigger than a #1 ranking, and if that's all you want, then give me a budget and we'll pay for it. But I would say for the most part, we've moved beyond a #1 ranking. And now what we have to educate people on is that rankings are really a personal metric, that the rankings you see are probably going to be slightly different than everybody else. And I'm going to walk through why that happens, and so you can help educate people within your own organization of why ranking is a personal metric now rather than a universal metric. And then, of course, as I had mentioned before, it's all the expectations. Campaign metrics need to focus on the business objectives, not just on the external factors of rankings and somewhat in visibility. We want to look at the visibility of a company, but ultimately what we need to look at is how is your search campaign delivering on your business objectives, because that's the point of it all, is what are we trying to accomplish and how is it being accomplished? See, it's when I see charts like this that still make me a little queasy and still make me roll my eyes. This was done about 2 years ago, asking people, what are you measuring? And unfortunately, there hasn't been much change since this initial survey, that the vast majority of people are measuring the number of visits to the website. And then they're measuring social sharing, time on site, and less than half are still measuring SEO rankings. Now that still boggles my mind, because that's what I'm going to walk through here, is why we can't measure SEO rankings. It is a completely undependable metric. And so what really surprises me, shocks me, is that 35% of people are measuring subscriber growth and 27%. A little more than a fourth of businesses surveyed here are measuring sales leads. This is what is so shocking and surprising, especially when we come to campaign metrics and expectations of a client, and that is, what are the business objectives? What is it that you want to grow? Because the last column here, sales leads, is what makes business grow. That is a direct contributor to revenue. And subscriber growth, well, that builds my list, and marketing to my list is a direct contributor to revenue. And so, as I said, this is just so mind-boggling, because the two things that directly contribute, that have a direct impact on revenue, are the least measured in this survey. The four things that have an indirect impact, meaning that you can have, as I mentioned before, an incredible number of website visits, but absolutely no revenue coming in as a result of that. These are all key performance indicators: visits, sharing, time on site. Those are key performance indicators. They're not business objectives. And so part of the expectations of developing campaign metrics is understanding the difference between a key performance indicator and a business objective, because it's easy to get sidetracked, especially with search metrics, especially with these types of things of, visits, time on site, page views, rankings, but they're all indirect, which is why they are under the key performance indicator grouping, whereas we want to look at the business objectives of subscribers, sales leads, downloads, getting information into people's hands, engaging with them, and moving along the customer journey. When we can develop metrics that focus on the experience of a prospect or a customer, then and tie that to our SEO performance, now we're developing how our campaign will directly impact the business and the customer. Now, I want to just go off to the side for a little bit here and talk about rankings. And this is the whole concept of rankings are personal, not universal. Now, you'll notice on this is a rankings report from 2008 and compared to 2006. I had to go back really far to find this screenshot. And this is of if you were doing a search for the keyword latest news, this would show you who ranked #1 and the change in the rankings over the past 2 years. And it also, we're looking at it in Google and MSN. For some of you, this may look really familiar, because what this did is you put in the domains that you are tracking, the keywords, and you would get a report about who ranks where for what keyword. Now, this is back in the day, and even around 2008, we were still seeing we were starting to see fluctuations in rankings based on where you are searching from, as well as some history coming in, but we weren't seeing it to the extent that we see it today. You see, now today, your rankings that you see are largely based on your search history. It's based on past searches. It's based on content preferences, what types of content you tend to search on, click on, or visit, what business or industry you tend to search on, as well as any behaviors such as your predilection to click on ads, paid ads, display ads, or anything like that. And so what's happening here is this has been actually going on for the past 10 years, is that more and more of your rankings are going to be personalized to your unique history and the words, the sites that you visit, the words you use, the types of queries that you make. All of this is being developed in order to provide you the most relevant personal results. Ultimately, it's also being done in order to focus the paid search ads specifically to you and your behavior and the industry that you're in, because that's how the search engines monetize. So the better they understand you and what you're looking for, and again, it all comes down to intent. If they can figure out your intent and provide you results that are relevant, both paid and organic, then that's the goal. That's what they're trying to do. And so simply based on your history, we're seeing that rankings are going to vary from person to person, and maybe even from computer to smartphone, depending upon how you use them. The second thing is regional results. If you search for specific things in one region, it's going to show up differently in other regions. If I search for, right now, if I go to Google and type in Ford dealership, I'm going to see the one that's near me. And I'm not going to see one that's out in another state or another region, because based on the localization that search engines are providing, it's going to look at that query as a localized result and serve it to me specifically. So based on location, now sometimes we will see things, brands are more global. However, if I'm looking for something that is specific to my region, that can be based on my IP address, my country, my city, my state, even into a zip code. Local results targeted results can be limited to a small area to only show to people who are within that area or searching in that area. And so more and more based on localization, we're seeing that affect the results. And that has been highly impactful, especially over the past 2 to 3 years, as local search has just gotten miles better in all of the search engines, and it's only going to increase as well. But then also based on the different types of media, based on language, based on the type of search, the intent of search, or what words you might use, as well as here we have the machine learning come in. What you'll notice here is simply if I do a search for something in Spanish as compared to English, I get different results. I get a completely different results page. There's more videos on the Spanish results from the Spanish search than the English. Also, the makeup of the page is completely different. So the words you use, how you structure the query, the language, those are all going to affect the type of results that you see. And then also what you can see here is that the organic results, we're seeing videos taking over results, how-tos, actual, multiple things happening in the search engine results page. And so it's no longer just a list of 10 links and running a ranking report to see where you rank. Because what's happening here is we're seeing multiple videos being served prior to even seeing any what you would call a traditional link or traditional website snippet here showing up in the search engine results page. So as you can see, all of these things are just completely transforming a individual's rankings. And so if you are to measure rankings, what you're measuring is unreality. You're measuring something that doesn't exist. And as I like to say, it's extinct before it's even run, because no person will ever see a ranking report. They will see that reflected in their results. It's going to be personalized and unique. Something also to throw into the mix, that even based on your device, you are going to see different results. Primary reason is because if you're using a smartphone, it knows your location. And so you're going to have location results mixed in. Also, based on contracts with different search providers, with different licensing from Google, licensing from YouTube, the results will be different based on the phone you use, based on the provider that you have, and based on simply just being mobile as opposed to desktop. So results are different based on the device. So hopefully, if anyone was hoping to run a simple ranking report as an SEO campaign metric, just this little sidelight here has shown it's really a non-starter anymore. The traditional ranking report is extinct, and we have to move beyond that. So how do we move beyond that? Because there's also, now that I just shared the difficulties of a traditional ranking report, we also have a couple other obstacles thrown at us that are specifically both from a search engine standpoint and from a user standpoint. The first obstacle that we're running into is from a search engine standpoint. This is what Google is doing. If I do a search for top car reviews in 2017, at the very top of the results, I get a snippet of information pulled from Consumer Reports. Now what's happening here, and you may have seen this as well, if you type a question or something like that, that Google is not only displaying websites, but they're displaying the answers. And they're pulling the content from these websites. Now when they do that, that does not show up as a visit, and it doesn't show up as a ranking to Consumer Reports. Consumer Reports has no method of tracking this visibility, and it's incredible visibility. So at one point Google is providing information to the searcher, but The owner of this result is having its content displayed by Google without any knowledge that it's happening unless someone has gotten in order to see that. So this is a significant amount of visibility that right now goes unreported because there's no way to integrate this into any metric calculation other than a visual inspection to see what's happening with this. We're going to see more and more of this. Google is presenting more and more answers through the search engine results page rather than just the website. The main reason is Google has seen the more they do this, the more they deliver the answer in the search engine results page, rather than having people click through to go to a website, they find that people are more likely to come back and use Google again. And what's happening here is that Google essentially is eliminating the click-through. They're trying to keep people on the search engine results page as long as possible. Think about some of the searches you've done recently. If you search for weather information, if you search for flight information, if you search for sports scores on Google, those types of things, you're going to get your answer in the search results page. You don't even have to click anywhere else to get the information. It's right there. This is going to not only grow under Google, but this is really the big question mark as to what is the whole purpose of Google and what are they doing and how does it benefit me as a website being in these results when I can't track this and when Google is trying to keep people on their site, on their property as long as possible. This is the big question mark moving forward for SEO metrics. The other side of this is from a consumer standpoint, and this is what we call dark search. Dark search are searches that originate from a non-traditional search engine. For example, if you do a search from your computer, for example, Cortana, or if you do a search from your operating system in Apple, you can do a search almost on the desktop through the Spotlight search, and it will bring up search results. If you go through that, it's using basically the search engine capability built into the operating system, but it doesn't get reported as a search engine referral. Instead, what's happening is it's sending you to that site as a direct traffic. So anything that's from an operating system, a search that comes through an app. Now, if you're using the Google app, this is kind of a gray area, but it does happen. So you basically have to install the Google search app or use something in the browser. But if you're in an app with a search function, and that app is not a search engine app, it will show up as direct traffic. Your voice-based searches, that's using the operating system. Now you can use a voice-based search in the Google search app, and that will show up as a search referral. I know this might get a little confusing, but this also is, this is sort of the dark search of what's going on. And then also, Amazon, like I said, is stealing a lot of business away from Google, but there's no way to really know what your Amazon ranking is for a specific product or query. So in that way, you're kind of losing some of whatever Amazon is taking. We're also losing some of that data. So those are some of the obstacles that we're running into in terms of getting a big picture of campaign metrics. So like I said, we need to start with the business goal. When we start developing campaign metrics, this is where the expectations need to be very, very clear. And I kind of like the acronym of CLEAR here, that we need to clearly state what is the business purpose? What are we trying to ultimately accomplish? And how will search help to accomplish that? Based on that, we create a set of goals. We lay out the goals of the campaign. What do we want people to do? And then carry that over into how does that accomplish the purpose? We then explain how and define success. Explain how success is accomplished. As people meet those goals, how does that fit into the customer journey? Where is that in the customer journey? How does it move them from one stage to the next? How do we measure that? And how do we define that as success? Then we align metrics to that strategy. We don't just start with the metrics, we start with the purpose, the goal, defining success, and then aligning metrics as we have our strategy. And then the final stage is the ideal customer experience. How do we relate that through these metrics? How do we explain that our customer has seen this and then they did this? Or they looked for this information and it was a successful visit. Now what will they need? This is where we look at the overall customer journey and how search is a part of that journey. Now, getting into some very specific metrics that will assist this. One of the things that I like to look at, and this can be a part of the reporting, if I'm looking at just the cold hard facts of SEO campaign metrics, one of the first things I'm going to look at is that audience overview, and I'm going to look specifically at my organic traffic. Now, one of the things I need to caution is making sure, and I'm surprised I still have to say this, is comparing like time frames. You can compare year over year if you're comparing the entire year, quarter to quarter. Example is I'm looking at first quarter 2017 compared to first quarter 2016. I want to compare like time frames. I am amazed at how many businesses still look at month to month to month to month. And there is such a drastic difference between month to month. You have to compare this quarter to the same quarter last year. This month, this year to last. You have to compare the like time frames. Going month to month is chasing your tail. So from here, I want to specifically just look at my organic coverage. At this point, what I'm looking at here is with the audience overview, I'm looking at my total number of sessions this year compared to last year, and I can see that it's higher, and in some areas I've seen some dips, but then when I want to go look at specifically in Google this year or this first quarter compared to first quarter last year, where am I at in terms of sessions, new users, bounce rate, conversion rate, and transactions? That's what's going to help me as far as getting the first step in my SEO metrics. The next is looking at total organic visits. This is everything that comes through search. Now, again, this is part of the conversation. This is everything we can track because there are things that are completely outside of this. This might be a good time to say this. I was talking to an analytics provider a couple of years ago, and in comparing different analytics systems. And I asked them, what makes your analytics more accurate than your competitors? It was very interesting because this is the lead engineer, and he sort of shushed me. This was on the trade show floor. And he says, in analytics, we don't talk about accuracy. He says, what I like to say is that our analytics are less inaccurate than our competitors. And that is really the case when it comes to analytics. If you've ever compared analytics from two different systems and looking at the same metrics, they never agree. I'm always amazed at how many people try to make their Google Analytics line up with their Omniture Analytics, and it will never happen. Or they'll look at multiple different packages, or they'll tell me my agency is reporting these numbers, but these numbers are what I'm seeing, and they're using two different systems. That's because analytics, it's tracking what it can track, and what is unclear, an algorithm tries to organize it, or an algorithm tries to assign things that are unclear to different areas. So each analytics program kind of has its own methodology of organizing the information and interpreting it. Based on that, that's where you come up with the we're less inaccurate than our competitors. So when we're measuring organic coverage, we're measuring what we can based on this system. It may not agree with another system. Don't try to make it agree, because it just simply won't. Now, here I'm looking at my total organic search visits, and I can see, compared to the year prior, this quarter is up 18% in visits. I can look at total conversions, and I can see that it's up 30%. And then also what I want to do is look at landing pages and my keyword concepts. Now, this is a sense, because the search engines don't provide us any keyword data, what we can do is look at our landing pages and the amount of visits those landing pages are generating. Then it doesn't take much to kind of look at those landing pages and see what are they basically about. What are those keyword concepts? Now, you can go to Google Search Console, you can go to Bing Webmaster Tools, and you can see which keywords are driving traffic to your business through those webmaster portals. And you can get the concept of what keywords are driving traffic. Now, one thing I do like about Bing Webmaster Tools is that Bing Webmaster Tools will not only show me which keywords I'm ranking for and which ones are sending traffic to my website, but they will also show me which pages are the recipients of those keywords. So they are able to tie together the keywords and the landing pages. And so I'll do that in Bing. And also Google Search Console will do that to an extent. But to some degree, this is still a manual process of looking at my landing pages and comparing them to the keyword concepts. As I said, Google's trying to push everything together into intent. And so evaluate your landing pages in terms of intent. What would someone be searching on in order to get to this page? And utilize Google Search Console and Bing Webmaster Tools, maybe some of your analytics, in order to figure that out. Also, what I like to look at are comparative metrics. When I'm looking at the success of an SEO campaign as tied to other types of campaigns, I also want to show the value of search engine optimization and what it's providing. And so in looking at a source medium, I'm using Google Analytics here. What I can do here is, for this time frame, look at the overall numbers of sessions generated through each channel. As you can see there, Google on its own is about 67% of all visits. Yahoo is providing about 1.28% of visits, and then we can see a little less than 20% are direct visits. So comparatively, I can see where my search engine optimization is contributing in comparison to all the other channels. And I can get a sense there in terms of, I can run a revenue report by source, where I can see where my search is responsible for the greatest amount of revenue, for the greatest amount of orders. And also, when I look at one interesting thing here, I can also do a value per session breakdown. And what this shows me is the email campaigns, those by far have the highest value per session. Visitors coming through the blog are next in value per session. And then we can see our search visitors showing up there as a significantly high value per session. And one thing that might jump out to you there is you can see that Bing has a £4.27 value per session compared to Google with a £1.77. That's normal. Over the past 15 years, it has been a really interesting phenomenon that visitors from Bing or MSN have a higher value, even though I will get just sheer numbers and higher revenue from Google, but they are a higher value visitor than Google visitors. That's just a phenomenon that we've just observed for more than about 15 years, and really kind of interesting there. So from a metric standpoint, I like doing comparative metrics to see, here's how search compares to your other channels, here's what it's driving compared to your other channels in terms of visitors, in terms of engagement, in terms of revenue and revenue per user. And again, I kind of mentioned this, associative metrics, using Google's Search Console to see some of the keywords that Google is driving. Google My Business, I'm going to show that as we get into here before we wrap up. Bing Webmaster Tools, as I said, they will show you the keywords as well as the associated landing pages. Analytics, getting into analytics and looking at your organic traffic. I showed you a few reports there, but that is where people need to live in order to understand what's going on with their search traffic. And more, alongside analytics, I'm seeing a CRM integration with analytics really becoming a different standard, because within the CRM integration, I can then look at the entire customer journey. I can track the initial touch point of a consumer. I can then see how that spreads into different searches. So maybe they'll find me first from a paid ad, but then how does subsequent organic searches contribute to different touch points? And then maybe there is a retargeting touch point. And so I really like what I'm seeing with modern CRM systems in tracking more of the customer journey and how search is a part of it. And that really then gets to the point of looking at that customer journey, that ideal customer experience, and it immediately puts it in the context of the purpose of the campaign and the goals of the campaign focused around the user experience. When I'm talking with a client, laying out expectations, really my first question is, what makes you money? Because that's what we want to track. There's our purpose. We want to look at sales and leads. And so I want to look at these prioritized outcomes. This gets back to, what is the purpose of the overall campaign? Then we need to look at what are performance goals. Now, not all of these goals carry the same amount of weight. What I mean by that are inquiries, support, people viewing videos, online chat, subscribes, downloads. Those are all a different level of engagement than a typical like or retweet or a pin. That's what I call, these are much more active. If someone makes an inquiry, that's a lead. If they contact support, if they're viewing videos about new cars, that's a performance goal. That means I'm engaging somebody and I'm answering their questions. We can look at people subscribing and asking for more information, downloading brochures, downloading information. This is where we'll attach different value to different actions, because some actions will contribute much more in terms of value in the customer experience than others. And so we want to look at the performance goals and establish a level of value around them. And then explain clearly the difference between a performance goal and a performance indicator. Performance indicators: visibility, visits, time on site, pages viewed, bounce rate. These are all good performance indicators, but they are removed from a direct impact on the business goals. It's an indirect factor. In fact, they can even be misleading if that's what you're using, because you could see that business goals are excelling while these numbers might go down, or they might go up and business goals go down, because it's what are you doing with the information and how are you focusing your efforts. I want to focus real quickly before I wrap up here on Google My Business. And this is something that Google has done more and more of. I'm using actually a local landscaper that I've been helping out simply because I love the numbers that are showing up on this. And it's really cool because you just put your business in and then you set the service area. So it can be a zip code, it can be a radius, and then you can view the insights. This is just on the left side is the login panel, and it will show you how many searches your business has shown up for in the past month. As we can see here, we're almost at about 6,500 searches where people searched for their business. We can see about 8.3 thousand views of their local listing and about 16,000 actions. So we can see here, this probably right here is probably going to be, I think, the future of SEO metrics. The main reason is this is what happens when you do a search for a local business and the business box shows up in the results. And that business box has a picture of the business, a description, hours, pictures, and phone number. And what can happen here, just like with the information where Google is showing all the information and you don't even have to click through it, this is tracking that type of visibility. This is showing you how many times simply your business information showed in the search results. And so now from here we can look specifically on what customers, how they viewed your business. And we can see how many times the business showed up in search and how many times it showed up on maps in the top graph. In the lower graph, and this is where I think this is, I think this where reporting is really going to be moving, is from that business box in the search results. We're now showing in the past month how many total actions people have taken. And that is how many people visited the website from the information box, how many people requested directions, and how many people called from that business listing. And the far right graph shows you how many people, the dark green, so maybe a little over a fourth of people were looking for the specific business name. A little more than, or a little less than 3/4 of people were looking for related keywords, and because of that saw the business information. So from a visibility metric standpoint within Google search results, I love what Google My Business is doing because it's providing me a view of how many people are seeing my listing without even clicking on it, but then because of the interactions available through smartphone searches, local searches, map-based searches, I can track a lot of this local activity and how people are then integrating or engaging with my local search result on google.com. So reporting has changed, and it will continue to do so. That is the only hard and fast rule here. And so metrics need to focus on emphasizing conversion rates, optimizing landing pages, and it requires analytics expertise much more than ever. And ultimately, what we want to get to is a measurement of the user experience. Like I said, that big picture of the user experience. Did they find what they wanted? Doing task-based user testing, where they have to find a specific bit of information from the search to the site. And from that, you can gather an understanding of how quickly they're able to find it, how they can navigate there, both in a desktop and a mobile. And this gets to the micro moment assessment. When people are searching for things such as, can I afford it? Show me the new cars. Where can I get financed? Those types of micro moment questions that people type into the search box or speak into their phone. That's where we want to assess the experience of what do they see, what do they find, how easy is it for them to accomplish their objectives, and then integrate that into a campaign measurement reporting scheme.
On behalf of Marketing, Sales, and Service, Global Learning and Development, we would like to thank you for participating in this digital marketing learning webinar hosted by MarketMotive. This concludes this webinar session. Thank you for joining.